Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another e-bike review from our 2021 eBike Shootout. This is going to be the beginning of our enduro category of bike, which means it has more than 150 millimeters of rear travel. If you missed any of the trail bikes, check some of our previous videos for 150 and below bikes. The Canyon Torque On, brand new to the North American market. At the time of our shootout, the bikes weren't quite released, so we actually got a slightly different spec Torque On from Canyon than the one that will be available in North America. The Canyon Torque On 8 is what will be available for $53.99. We tested essentially what was a 9, so had a little bit nicer suspension spec, but geo frame material, a lot of other stuff will be similar, so we feel it'll be a pretty close comparison. This is a 180 mil front, 175, 27.5 bike. Our model, again, came spec with Fox factory suspension in the form of a 38 and an X2 rear shock. The North American model will have a RockShox Zeb R and Super Deluxe Select R rear shock, so definitely a little bit of a downgrade there. Obviously, the price comes down quite a bit, so $53.99 is a pretty good price point in our opinion for getting a solid e-bike out. This bike is built around the Shimano Steps EP8 motor and a 504 watt-hour battery. Canyon does sell this bike new with a second battery option, and it's actually at a bit of a discount, so if you know that you're going to be doing lots of laps, you might want to take advantage of that quick buy option and save yourself a couple $100 on an auxiliary battery. Otherwise, you can always make that purchase down the road. Rest of the cockpit spec on our bike came with SRAM Code RSC brakes and GX Eagle. The bike comes with a 150 millimeter dropper post, and the Geo was a little bit of a polarizing topic for some of our testers. The size large has a 485 reach, which is a touch, I guess, on the long side for some of our preferences. Like myself, I like 475, but it's definitely not a deal breaker by any means. Stack height is 634 mil, 1,273 millimeter wheelbase, 430 mil chain stays, and a 74-degree seat tube angle. That was kind of a number that threw some of us off, I should say most of us. Head tube angle comes in at 63.5. I mean, it's a pretty specific bike. Obviously, it's a 180 front, 175 rear, so it's definitely got an intended application and user, and the bike doesn't really do great outside that window. And what we mean by that is this bike does best when you're riding newer school, groomed flow trails, big jumps, generally bike parky type terrain, or when your pedals are even. The bike is really low, and we were having a frustrating time trying to climb this thing. The 74-degree seat tube angle, was not really the biggest issue in our opinion when it came to climbing. The biggest issue is that we just simply could not pedal this bike. So we were regularly dropping back behind people who are just spinning and climbing up through these technical rock gardens, and those of us that were on the Canyon Torque were hitting pedals, crank arms, and just getting bounced all over the place. The upside to that is it is a lot of fun to go downhill on. It's fun to jump. It's a pretty playful e-bike. It's definitely designed, again, for an intended purpose, and that's going down in bike parky, more open, new school terrain. The price and value is certainly there for, making it a pretty awesome e-bike to get into for, under $5,500. That's definitely solid. Most of our testers really liked this bike. in those applications, but it's going to polarize a lot of users, and it polarized our crew. And you know, looking at the notes from all of our riders and a couple of the key guys who spent the most time on this bike, the likes and dislikes kind of were the same across the boards.
Having that 27.5 wheel front and back in those really tight chutes, you could really get around some of those sharp edge rocks that we're pointing out from the trail.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to corner. I mean, I think corner really well, jump. I mean, once you're kind of on the smoother trails and you didn't have to worry about the rocks, that thing rips and it likes to charge.
Traction was awesome. The suspension tune was awesome. The compliance, the sensitivity, the progression, it was all very nicely done, and Canyon did a great job in a lot of aspects of this bike. Again, whether we were doing some, you know, huck to flat stuff off the ramp, finding rocks to send it off of, natural gaps into just chundery rock gardens, the Canyon Torque On really impressed our testers and was an absolute blast. We were wishing we could find, you know, more bermed, jumpy flow trails. Obviously the desert isn't quite the place where you can build those very easily, but we have no doubt that bike would absolutely kill it. Downsides, as I talked about, low BB, seat tube angle, 504 watt-hour battery. Canyon said that they intentionally made this decision to keep the bike lighter. It's 54 pounds. There are bikes with larger batteries that weigh 54 pounds or less. So granted, they cost probably another, you know, $1,500 to $2,500 more. So, you know, maybe if they were to go with a larger battery and keep this price point and spec, it would have been a little heavier, but it's a little bit of a downside, to be honest. Like we'd love to see bikes just come in with 630s because you just can't do the laps you can do on other bikes. Overall, a solid bike for the aggressive park downhill free ride guy who doesn't necessarily have a ton of elevation or vert to climb, or if they do, has access to a place where they can store that second battery when they exhaust that 504. Low BB is going to be tough. If you're a backcountry explorer, if you ride in a rugged area, you're going to be frustrated, to say the least, with the inability to really climb over that terrain. And my riding style maybe isn't the intended user and application. Some of the other guys on our crew loved this bike a lot more than I did. We take a vote at the end, so it might be doing a lot better than my opinion might give, but if you've got the terrain for this bike, you're gonna love it. I'll just say that. So make sure you subscribe, stay tuned for more videos, and we'll see you guys out on the trails. Thanks for watching.